locked in.
Look at what we have here, folks.
To the only show that matters.
The cream of the crop.
Duke loves wrestling.
And there is no one that does it better than
your host.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
The Duke.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
My brothers, sisters, non-binary, extraterrestrials. Welcome back to Duke Loves Rasslin podcast, a show about pro wrestling and everything else. I got to tell you, folks, the question of the week, and possibly the question of the year, goes out to none other than Tony Khan, a.k.a. TK, a.k.a. Anthony. Hey, Tony, is All Elite Wrestling safe for children to attend? I asked this question because this past weekend at the AEW Revolution, MJF, the AEW World Champion, walked up to a woman in the crowd, in the middle of his match, mind you, grabbed a beverage out of the woman's hand, looked at the kid standing right next to her, who turned out to be her child, and proceeded to throw the drink in the kid's face. Completely doused the kid in this drink. And come to find out, this is not scripted. This is not a plant, which even I was wondering, hey, is that a plant? No, it wasn't a plant. This was just MJF going off the cuff like he always does, crosses the line, goes too far like he always does, threw a drink in a kid's face. Ric Flair himself, the greatest wrestler of all time, he was asked, hey, what do you think about this? And he said on his podcast with Conrad Thompson, I don't like it. If you got to do things like that, then that means you're not really over, because you shouldn't have to reduce yourself to throwing drinks in kids' faces in order to get over. That would never fly in the WWE. Ric Flair himself, that's how he responded to this. Okay, this is the greatest wrestler of all time. And one of the greatest heels of all time in pro wrestling. So, Tony, I got to go back to this. Is it safe for kids to attend AEW events live? And furthermore, is it safe for black children to attend AEW live events? Is it safe, Tony? Because certainly it doesn't seem like it when you have MJF, your world champion, the guy who's supposed to be the face of your company, throwing drinks on kids. And not just any kind of drink. It was an alcoholic beverage. It was an adult beverage. Right? What is going on, man? Listen, and I got to tell you, folks, and I know a lot of children listen to the show because their parents are big fans. So the kids are in the car with the parents listening to the show. It's one of the main reasons why you don't hear a lot of cussing and carrying on this show. Because it is a family-friendly podcast. We do have some adult-themed episodes, which I warn people about. But for the most part, this is a family-friendly podcast, right? But I wonder about some of you folks out there. You're not top shelf. You're the flavored malt beverage crowd. You know who you are, right? You need to pull up your skinny jeans. You know who you are. You know exactly who you are. Card-carrying members of the humanoid society of the galaxy. Some of you out there have gone through so many mental gymnastics. Okay? Finding excuses for MJF in particular. You're acting like it's acceptable somehow to just grab a drink and throw it on a kid. A kid who's not even part of the show. I'm completely dumbfounded by the whole thing. So many people have gone out of their way to try to defend this nonsense. And I want to know from you listening, what do you think? Do you think it's acceptable for wrestlers to be throwing drinks on kids who are not part of the show, by the way? Do you think that's safe? They just grab drinks out of people's hands, have no clue what's in the drink, and then just dump it in a kid's face? Some of you out there, oh, let's not blow it out of proportion, man. Come on, the kid got to go backstage. Okay, the kid got to go backstage. That's the company trying to run damage control because their champion completely crossed the line, went into business for himself, and made a fool out of himself, quite frankly. The kid gets to go backstage. That does not negate the fact that MJF has created an unsafe environment for the fans, especially children. And Tony Khan, I need to know from you, pal, are you sanctioning this? Because it sure looks that way. It sure looks like you're okay with it. And that's dangerous. That's very, very dangerous. And it's no wonder why you're having such a difficult time growing your fan base. Children shouldn't be subjected to that. It's bad enough you got these knuckleheads bleeding all over the place every other event. It's bad enough you have all of these untrained talent, improperly trained talent, sloppy talent, dumping people on their heads every event, literally every event. Now we got to worry about your champion, the guy who's supposed to be setting an example for everybody in the locker room, the guy who's supposed to be leading everybody in the locker room, your world champion, the face of your company. Now he's grabbing drinks and throwing it in kids' faces. And you're just sitting there, Tony, with that weird look on your face, because God forbid you actually stand up and start holding people accountable for their actions in that company. It's completely dumbfounding what's going on. It's funny because when you do something, especially in a business, when you do something, and pro wrestling is a business first and foremost, folks, don't let anybody tell you differently, right? The purpose of everything that you do should be to make money. It should be to grow the brand. It should be to attract more attention, positive attention, so you can attract more paying customers. Is grabbing a drink and throwing it in a kid's face going to attract more paying customers? Come on. We've completely just lost all sense of reason, all sense of focus. It looks like a clown show at this point. And, Tony Khan is the ringleader because he's allowing these folks to just do whatever the hell they want. And it doesn't look like there's any consequences there, which is fascinating to me. And again, you folks, IWC, the media, quote unquote wrestling media, you're trying to go out of your way to give this guy a pass. The same guy, MJF, who I called a scumbag before for some things that he did, the same guy who wanted to pit the Holocaust up against the transatlantic slave trade and make it seem like, the Holocaust, because it was more recent, it's somehow should get more attention and all this. Like, this guy's just all over the place with the way he's carrying on. And I'm going to tell you, you couple that with him throwing a drink in the kid's face, and it's okay to start wondering if this guy's a racist. I think that's a fair question to ask. Because what is his problem? What is this guy up to here? What does he do? What is he thinking? And why does he think he can do these things? It's fascinating. It really is. Again, that's the face of your company, Tony. I'll tell you, man, it's really interesting because it's like a tale of two ships going in completely opposite directions. You look at what's happening with the WWE, they can't miss right now, right? But you know what you see happening in the WWE? They're giving, Cody Rhodes is giving his belt to kids in the crowd, and the wrestlers, they might jaw off at the kids and make them laugh and stuff, but when they see the kid, who's looking a little upset, they tend to the kid and all that. They're not throwing drinks in the kid's face, I'll tell you that much. And it's no wonder that the company's making so much money, that they're so highly rated, so highly celebrated, especially lately. in comparison to AEW that just continues to fail. Not because there's a lack of talent in the company, but because there's a lack of sound leadership in the company. I don't know what Tony Khan is thinking. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know why he would allow his world champion, MJF, who has to wear damn near platform boots to make himself look tall, because God forbid you accept the fact that you are a very mid-sized wrestler, MJF. I don't care how thick your boots are. You might as well walk around like your Bootsy Collins right there with the big platform shoes or something there, pal. Anybody look at his boots? Look at his wrestling boots. Look how high those things are. Because I guess he is afraid of the fact that he's short. You were born that way, buddy. Lady Gaga, accept it. Anyway, a scumbag like MJF walking around with no consequences. What does that say to everybody else in the locker room? And it's interesting because this guy's been given the world. He's been protected. And then you look at folks like Will Hobbs, who's been jerked around all over the place. Then you look at somebody like Ricky Starks. He's being jerked around all over the place. Right? I still don't know what they're doing with Keith Lee. You start looking around, look at the entire women's division being jerked around all over the place. So it's interesting who they reward and who they, treat like they're redheaded stepchildren, for lack of a better term. I don't know what would possess you to want to even have the belt on a guy who would think that it's acceptable in the middle of a pay-per-view, in the middle of any event, ever in life, to grab a stranger's drink and then throw it in her kid's face. This is beyond. This is like, okay. No wonder people have stopped watching this program. No wonder even Dave Meltzer himself has started to criticize your program. I saw Raj Giri. Raj, he's a politician. And Raj is a friend of the show. I like Raj. You folks know that. I've always put Raj over. I've always held Raj accountable as well. But he's a politician. Raj made the mistake, and he's done it before, of actually giving his opinion and pointing out some flaws that he saw in AEW and some of the booking philosophies and what have you. And then he had to delete his tweet because he's getting attacked by the AEW folks and their crazy fans and stuff. Right? Their legion of burner accounts and what have you, in addition. And it's just funny to me because this is par for the course. Tony, how long do you think you can control the narrative here? Because the reality of the situation is you're not growing. You're not growing, buddy. And even when people try to give you a chance, you turn around and you let people do Bush League things like what MJF did, throwing a drink in a kid's face. A black child in addition to that. No repercussions. Powerhouse Hobbs was the wrestler in the back who the kid wanted to meet, or who they brought over to the kid. And he spent time with the kid, and allegedly it was a good time, etc., etc. There's a tale of two wrestlers. Powerhouse Hobbs has put over damn near every major wrestler in that company, and yet the only wrestler since Powerhouse Hobbs has been in AEW who has actually put Powerhouse Hobbs over in a singles match and who's actually been a top 10 ranked wrestler in that company is Wardlow. Let that one sink in. You got MJF throwing drinks in kids' faces, and Powerhouse Hobbs has to go clean up behind him over it. But yet Powerhouse Hobbs is the guy who was jobbing out to Orange Cassidy in 3 seconds, while MJF is your world champion. Are you kidding me? And I know Hobbs just won the TV title. Good for that. It's about time that something like that happened, but is that good enough? Shouldn't he be competing for the world title? He doesn't have to wear the platform shoes because Powerhouse Hobbs is a big guy. He was born that way. Right? He doesn't have to wear the platforms like MJF, and he certainly doesn't have to throw drinks in kids' faces. And listen, I'm no Powerhouse Hobbs apologist or even fan. I still think he owes Big Swole a major apology, and I got a problem with him until he does that, by the way. But the facts are the facts. It's fascinating. The whole thing is fascinating to me. I don't know what the end game is for AEW at this point, but I do know this. For Warner Brothers Discovery, if they're watching along, I can't imagine that they're doing anything but cringing at something like that. It's just like, oh, what are you doing? And it's self-inflicted wounds because it was unnecessary. And here's the crazy part. MJF was in a match with Bryan Danielson, an Iron Man match. It went over 60 minutes. This should have been the talk of the town. But people are barely talking about the match because they're too busy talking about the fact that MJF threw a drink in a kid's face. And for all of you podcasters out there, in particular, who are part of wrestling media, especially you black podcasters, making excuses for MJF throwing a drink in a black kid's face, I'm just telling you right now, keep shucking and jiving. Keep shucking and jiving. Tony Khan's, he can make all the drinks for you, can sign all the NDAs. At the end of the day, you got to stand for something. And if you think it's acceptable for a guy who's been carrying on the way that he has, and then he throws a drink, he didn't throw the drink in the white kid's face. He made sure he found a little black boy, threw the drink in his face. You think that's acceptable? You think that's not a big deal? Then you are what we always knew you were. Indeed. Listen, folks, you know me. I'm not here to make friends. I'm not here to say what people like. I'm just here to point out what is. You know what I mean? I had interviews lined up. I said, nah, we'll do them next week or something like that. I'll do it another time because, I don't want anybody else to catch any strays about what I'm saying here. Because, there's some vindictive people in the wrestling industry. They'll hold wrestlers accountable for even going on podcasts where somebody will say the things that I say. But hey, look, I'm not here to buck dance for anybody like a lot of these other folks do. I'm not here to try to placate, play patty cake, sit here and look the other way while you got this guy who downplayed racism, downplayed slavery, try to tell people he knows racism because he's Jewish. Shout out to all the Jewish folks out there, but this guy, he's a piece of work. Then he goes and throws a drink in a black kid's face. After all of that. And it's the sum of all parts. And that wasn't even part of the show. It was just him going off the cuff. And then the owner, the owner's son, the guy who's in charge of running the company, he just sits there like a fool. Vince McMahon probably would have fired him on the spot. Would have fired him on the spot. But Tony Khan, he's in too deep. He doesn't know what to do. All of his toys are just turning against him now, doing whatever they want. And then the irony of it is that MJF will turn around and say, yeah, I'm going to be in WWE in 2024. Buddy, they don't want you. Not with that type of attitude, not with those types of antics. But you know what? You would never do that over there because you know better. You're doing it with Tony and AEW because you know that Tony doesn't have the gumption to hold you accountable. And that's unfortunate. But that's also why the company's in the position that it's in. Go figure. I want to know what you think, folks. Do you think it's acceptable, not only for what MJF did, throwing a drink in the kid's face, do you think it's acceptable for Tony Khan to just sit back and let it be what it is? Just staring off with that weird look on his face and his bushy hair. His hair. Put some dippity-do in that hair, Tony. Make it look like you care at least. Huh? The man's he's walking around and it looks like his hair is disheveled. He looks disheveled. He looks like he hasn't slept in days. And then you look at the way that his wrestlers are acting, and then it's like, Jesus, this is all part of a whole narrative here. It's a mess. Jesus. I've never seen Shad Khan, not a single strand of hair on his luxurious mustache out of place ever. But Tony Khan, he looks like he's been partying for years, and he's still going. The guy looks just like he needs some sleep. Know the meme? He needs some milk. He needs some sleep. This guy. And maybe after he's slept and he's refreshed, then he can go in there and get rid of some of these bozos who are making a mockery out of that company and making a mockery out of the industry. Because I'm telling you right now, if anyone ever asks me, hey, AEW, should I go check out when they're live? I'm going to tell them, no, don't go. Don't bring your kids. No, stay away from it. It's not safe. Especially if you're a person of color, especially if you're black, because their world champion is literally throwing drinks on people. Children. Incredible. Anyway, now that I've pissed everybody off, because, people are afraid. You can't speak up too loud. He's going to revoke access. One of these knuckleheads, these shucking and jiving, play rapper. They're a rapper, but yet they're begging for GoFundMe money. These shucking and jiving folks. You're going to ruin everything. Don't say that. You're going to ruin everything. You said that to me one time. You're going to ruin everything. Yeah, I'm going to ruin everything by calling out nonsense. Consider it ruined, my friend. Consider it ruined. Incredible. Anyway, as always, folks, be kind to yourselves and be kind to others. Take it away, Tony Schiavone.
This is Tony Schiavone, and we're desperately out of time on Duke Loves Wrestling.